in the fitness industry now, it's not as much the really thin, like model stick thin women that are modeling fitness. It's women who've had aesthetic enhancements, surgical enhancements. And unfortunately, that happens a lot, and that's not fitness.
Welcome, Hustleandfit family. I have an awesome interview today that's going to be really great. I'm hoping that you're as excited as I am. I have Aubrey Munno. She's a certified personal trainer and facial stretch therapist. That's actually pretty interesting. Her passion for fitness and fascination with the human body started, since she was a competitive cheerleader. So at a young age, she had several years as a competitor, coach, mentor. She's helped athletes. And she's done so many great things. And with over 6 years of extensive experience with clientele of all ages and abilities, she has developed the skills necessary to refine her coaching philosophy. I mean, at the end of the day, Bree is the person you go to when you want to get maximum performance on your body, and really has a comprehensive understanding of, how to go from where you are, zero to hero. So anyways, I want to welcome Bree, and, thanks for coming out today.
Thanks for having me.
So how's it going? How is the whole lifestyle, the COVID world going for you?
It's actually going really well. So I've transitioned a lot of my business over to the virtual space. So that's been super helpful. It was obviously a learning curve. I had never done virtual training before. I'm not used to sitting in front of a laptop, but here we are. We've made it work. And it's actually tapped into a lot of my creative side, which I wasn't really focused on before. So I'm using lots of, let's call it non-equipment for fitness, household items, towels, chairs, and having a lot of fun with it. And everybody's still progressing towards their goals. So that's the most important part.
That's awesome. That's amazing. So, okay, tell me a little bit more about your story. So you were a competitive cheerleader, and then is that what led you into like personal training? How did that whole thing come about?
Yeah, cheerleading, I would say, was my kind of bridge into the athletic world. I played a bit of soccer as a kid, but it was mainly cheerleading. But it was when I started coaching that I realized that that was where kind of my true soul passion came from, was helping others achieve their goals. So I loved being a competitor, but it was more about helping other people develop their skills, develop their conditioning. So I did a lot of research even as a kid. Like I was coaching at 16. So I did a lot of research on how to coach and different conditioning programming, different skill development, how to treat injuries, how to prevent injuries. And I took a kinesiology class in high school, and I was just kind of sold from there. I knew that that was where I wanted to go. So I pursued my post-secondary education in kinesiology as well. And it just everything just kind of built on each other to bring me to where I am today.
That's awesome. That's like, it's like almost like knowing what you want to be as a kid and then just driving forward. That's fantastic. So, I mean, yeah. So if you have a background in sports, so you know what it's like. And then on top of it, now you're the one coaching and developing people. So you really have a well comprehensive understanding of that. So, I mean, most of the people that we're working with aren't necessarily competitive athletes, but what should the average person be incorporating that a lot of athletes and these individuals are doing that we should be putting into our routines and exercises and diet?
So from a holistic perspective, which is kind of how I develop my coaching programs, I like to look at absolutely everything. So it's really difficult to compare an athlete's lifestyle to general population, just because they're not athletes. Their entire life and their product, their passion is their body. Most people, it's kind of the analogy that most of us use our heads for our passion as opposed to our bodies. So we're kind of like floating heads, and often we kind of disassociate from our bodies. So I find the carryover and what athletes do that general population should incorporate a little bit more of is that turning inwards, connecting with the body, and then incorporating different elements of that into the day-to-day lifestyle. So it doesn't have to be as aggressive as an athlete who's training 6-7 hours a day, but doing something to move every day. And then being very mindful of what you put in your body. So food-wise, nutrition-wise, supplement-wise, just kind of being mindful about everything, thinking about everything, not just eating for the sake of eating or eating because it's in front of you. Because athletes kind of curate their entire lifestyle to facilitate their body's growth and performance, which is helpful. It's just a little bit too rigid for most people's lifestyle.
Yeah, no, I fully get what you mean. But I did like the part where you said about like having it be something internal as the main driving force. And I think that's something that's actually pretty good for both, whether you're an athlete or just a regular person. That mindset is what gets you. Because I've actually been realizing that I feel like a lot of the times I've been talking to a lot of experts about nutrition and how to, shape your body and so forth and so on. But how much would you say like the mindset it comes into play when it comes to really reaching your body goals, really?
I would say we all as individuals have very complex relationship with food. So that relationship starts with your mindset or with the way that you view food and your food experience. It's very personalized. It's very emotional for a lot of people. So understanding that about yourself and developing a healthy relationship with food is probably the best place to start. And just understanding that doing something is better than doing nothing. So a lot of people have an all or nothing mindset in every aspect of life, whether that's work, relationships, dietary or body goals. And that's not necessarily healthy. And it doesn't often lead to positive results. It tends to create a bit of a negative experience with whether it's your fitness routine or your diet. So just knowing that taking things one day at a time, taking things one step at a time, and just appreciating every small change you make along the way tends to lead to a little bit of a healthier mindset with whatever goal that you have set for yourself.
I like that. So it's like taking it step by step, essentially, is how you get to the long path and stuff like that. And then, so for myself, I do a lot of like weight training. I've started incorporating running. As you know, we don't have any gyms available right now. So I've been doing more calisthenics, but it's made me really come to appreciate other modalities when it comes to, taking care of my body. I guess my question is, what are some of the activities or the things that you would say, other than just lifting weights, I should be adding into, my workout routine?
So that would entirely depend on what your goals are. There are that we call one concept is activities of daily living or non-exercise activities. That's important for everybody to incorporate into their life. And obviously this situation is very challenging for those types of activities because we're supposed to be staying home. So our walk to the store, our, walk over to a friend's place, our jog, our park sit, those kind of things are kind of cut down. So we're limited a little bit. And I also find that a lot of people are working more. So they're sitting in front of their laptop more. They're not going to have lunch with friends anymore. They're sitting and they're eating. So those activities are limited. So upping those types of activities, obviously when we're out of this kind of quarantine situation, is beneficial for everybody for overall health. And then depending on what your goals are, you can incorporate other elements of movement or activity that will help kind of facilitate what you're doing in the gym or in your resistance training program. One of those would be mobility training. So working in a mobility program, whether that's pre-workout, post-workout, morning, evening, just really depends on your body and kind of what your body needs for that time. And then some cardio or a little bit more high intensity, challenging type stuff. Again, depending where you're at and what your goals are.
Awesome. Actually, can you just go a little bit more in the mobility training? Because that's something kind of, I've been hearing it around, but it's not talked enough about. Can you go a little bit more detail on that one?
So their mobility obviously just means movement. So it just depends what you need. So I do a lot of mobility training with clients. I do a lot of mobility training with myself. And then as you mentioned, I'm a fascial stretch therapist as well. So I do assisted stretching, which is more of a therapeutic side of things. And I do performance stretching. So that's basically me stretching other people, sort of like a massage therapist, except just working more on range of motion. On your own, incorporating a pre-workout routine is going to help you, for one, kind of counteract the effects of your daily lifestyle. So like we said, most people are sitting. So when you're sitting, obviously your hips are in constant flexion. So you're going to cause a little bit more compression. You're going to lose a little bit of range of motion in the hips. when you're sitting on the glutes, you're also kind of losing that tension in the glutes. So you're lengthening the muscles, exactly the opposite of what you're doing with the hips. So you kind of want to counterbalance exactly what you're doing in your daily life. So get yourself back to a neutral place before you exercise, and then incorporate some activators to set yourself up for whatever specific exercises you're doing. So say, for example, today you're doing deadlifts. You want to open up your hips so that you've got enough range of motion to stand up properly in a neutral position at the top with your barbell, with your kettlebell, whatever weight you're lifting. You want to have enough so that your pelvis is in a neutral when you're standing. But then you want to activate the glutes, because when you're sitting on them, they're not active anymore. They go dormant. The muscle fibers aren't awake and ready to push the weight. So you kind of set up a routine so that you open up, get into neutral and mobilize, and then stabilize and get into an active position for exercise. And then you can do something complementary, but almost the opposite for a post-exercise routine, where you're now kind of turning down the nervous system, calming everything down, getting it ready for recovery, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense, actually. So that's something I would do in the beginning of the workout, and then something I would do at the end of the workout as well. That's interesting, actually. It's like basically active. No, go ahead. What were you saying?
Both specific. Yeah, sorry. I don't know why my phone keeps dinging, or my laptop keeps dinging. You want to curate your mobility routine the same way you would program your exercise routine. So before exercise, you develop your mobility routine and your activators specifically for that program that you've set up for the day in your resistance exercises. And then your post-workout can be a little bit more generalized, just to kind of calm the nervous system, set yourself up for recovery, promote kind of blood flow, detoxifying. That can be more of like a yoga flow type thing, which is not my area of expertise, but I do more of like a full body kind of systemic, we'll call it a turn down post exercise, as opposed to what a lot of people would use like static stretching kind of opportunity. I don't really advocate for many static stretches ever anywhere in a program.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Why is that?
Just from a muscle anatomy perspective, and this is my personal opinion, every trainer has a different opinion on it. Tons of trainers do static stretching. This is just me from my experience level, my personal experience, my clients, that kind of thing. I've just kind of moved static stretching away unless there's one specific key area of opportunity that needs lengthening in the muscle fiber. But just to give you the quick of it, basically when you're exercising, your muscles contract and they shorten. And that's a beneficial state to be in when you're doing resistance training. So if you then go to stretch right after a resistance exercise, you're kind of doing the exact opposite, and you're pulling on a contracted muscle tissue that may not necessarily be ready to relax yet. So you stay in a contracted state where your body and your metabolic system is kind of sending nutrients to repair that muscle, because, you know, obviously there's lots of theories that suggest when you exercise, you put small little micro tears in the muscle. And in order to grow muscle tissue, we send nutrients there, we send amino acids there to repair. So we don't want to interrupt that process by then tugging on that muscle tissue to lengthen it. Because generally speaking, in a resistance program, especially with heavy lifting, the goal is to build the muscle. The goal is not to lengthen it, if that makes sense. There's a much longer explanation as far as joint tissue goes, but when you're in a contracted state and you're at a hyper sympathetic nervous response, which you need during exercise, and you try to pull on that muscle tissue, even if it's gentle, oftentimes you're pulling on the joint tissue on either ends, and it can result in tearing and damage to the muscle that takes a longer time to recover from. So it'll improve the recovery time, and it'll increase the benefit of the resistance program if you do any static stretching, to do it pretty far away from the workout. So maybe before bed, if that's a goal of yours is to lengthen certain muscle tissue, do it maybe 5-6 hours after the workout as opposed to immediately post exercise.
That's good to know, actually. That's very good to know. That brings up a good point. What are typical myths or ideas that are out in the world that, you know, people don't know?
So I wouldn't call that one a myth, because like I said, it's personal preference, and every trainer's got different experiences with stretching, with mobility. I've just done a lot of mobility work myself. And with my certifications in stretch therapy, I've kind of understood the body from a different perspective. So that's my theory, and it's worked very well for me. I would say like there's a lot of myths out there.
I know,
There's a lot. It's so hard. Ones that really stick with me, I've got like some nutrition myths that really stick with me. One of them being that caloric deficit is the best way to lose weight.
Oh, this is good. Okay.
It's, there's a lot of research on both ends. So caloric deficit in and of itself, if you're approaching it from a very strategic perspective, with monitoring throughout, then it can be beneficial. And that often is beneficial in the weightlifting professional world or the athletic world, because they're no strangers to weighing food. So they know exact caloric density in all of their foods. So they can manipulate calories because everything else has kind of been fine-tuned. So all the food sources are fine-tuned. And it's kind of, they're working within like the top 5% zone. So they've already perfected the other 95%. The general population, it's not as easy as caloric deficit. For one, because it's very rare that people are measuring their calories, and you have to measure your calories like to a T if you're playing with a deficit, because you want to play within a very small range and you want to work it down. So you wouldn't say, hey, you want to lose weight, cut 500 calories from your day. It's too damaging. It puts you into a deprivation state, and our metabolic system is not evolved enough to adapt that quickly to a dramatic change. So it's not super beneficial for most people to do that. And anybody that I work with in the general population, I don't recommend counting calories. I don't recommend weighing food. And I don't often play around with their awareness of a caloric deficit. What I do instead is I play with proportions and serving sizes. So I'm playing slightly with their caloric intake, but they're not in that state of awareness because it, like I said, food, the relationship with food is very emotional. It can take an emotional toll when someone feels like they're depriving themselves of food, especially if you say eliminate a whole meal or no more snacking. That people often get into this state where, well, I can't do this and now I can't do that. And it's just a source of stress, which I'm sure a lot of us know what stress, the role of stress plays on the metabolic system. So it's counterintuitive when it comes to losing weight. And another huge dietary myth is that low fat diet equals fat loss. That one hopefully is moving away from the mainstream with the surge in keto. Because now people are appreciating the role that fat plays in overall health, but also in body composition maintenance, and just like tissue health, which everything in our body is made up of some type of tissue. And I think a lot of us are hopefully starting to understand the role that fat plays in that, hormonal health, like neurotransmitter health, everything. But that one is still prevalent, especially in older generations. So like, our parents' generations and even older than that are still kind of sticking with the low fat equals healthy or low fat equals weight loss. So that one is unfortunate. I feel like I climb an uphill battle with that one whenever I start with a client that's over the age of 40. It's always like, but I want to eat margarine, but I cut all the fat out of this, but this is low fat. And I'm like, please.
Stop it.
Yeah. So, but exercise myths, so many hundreds of exercise myths. I would say one is not a myth per se, but is something important to mention is the place and the use for cardiovascular training in weight loss. So cardiovascular training, and this is what I tell clients, there's a very big difference between doing steady state cardio and doing high intensity interval training or even moderate intensity interval training or metabolic conditioning. So they're very, very different things. And it's important to understand what you're doing before you incorporate it into a program. So going for a run, if you just go out for a jog and you're just, running along the street, that's a steady state cardio. So there is a place for all of it, especially in overall health, but it's important to understand how it contributes or takes away from your fitness and body composition goals. Because there are a lot of people that believe that doing intense cardio every day is the best way to lose body fat. And unfortunately, that one is super prevalent and very difficult to overcome from a training perspective. And I find it more predominant with females, to help them to understand that incorporating resistance training, especially, like, there's a time and place for every type of resistance training, but especially muscle building when it comes to body composition goals, because the fear is that they will look big and bulky like men. And I don't know how many times I've had to say, you know how hard it is for a female
Exactly.
to get to a bodybuilder aesthetic is years. And like we said about the dietary manipulation, years of very calculated resistance training, very calculated sleep, very calculated diet, everything. You go against your biology when you're working towards that.
That's my favorite one. Every time I talk to her, it's mostly yeah, you're right. It's mostly girls or women. I always love that. I'm just gonna hit the weight and I'm just gonna get massive. I'm like, every person, especially guys, would love that. Boom, and it's just like, no.
Right? Hopefully I just had to do a few bicep curls and then I'm jacked.
It's
like no.
Jack is like, oh my goodness.
Yeah,
That would be awesome.
I know, right?
So
but it's yeah, go ahead.
No, actually, no, go continue on. I was going to ask more about that anyways, actually.
I was just going to say it's that's kind of a crusade that I'm on as a female trainer. I would say there's a new appreciation for what would be considered to be a fitness physique for women. That maybe wasn't around 10 years ago. The idea, if you look at, say, the workout fitness videos in the 80s and 90s, they were very slim women. And knowing what I know about the body and about, lifestyle and diet and exercise and what equates to a fit physique, the celebrities that were modeling that fitness lifestyle were not likely to be actually engaging in a fitness lifestyle if they were that thin, because that's not resistance training. So resistance training will improve muscle development, which will give you a more muscular physique if you're also manipulating the diet in that favor. So my crusade is now for not idealizing any type of body outside of each individual. I encourage, and I do train primarily females, but males and females, I encourage them to look inwards, appreciate their body for what it is from their starting point, no matter what. Even if they have 40% body fat, appreciate it for what it is now, and let's work with finding the best version of that. Let's create the best version of that. And when I set goals with my clients, I try to encourage them to focus on lifestyle goals and performance goals first before aesthetic goals. And then as a coach, when I'm working with them throughout these different programs, I encourage them to celebrate their wins as far as performance goes. So I remind them of things that they've done. This was so much harder last week. You've achieved this week, and kind of take the focus away from the aesthetics, even though we all have aesthetic goals. And it's important to use that outward appearance as a reflection of the work, because our bodies, our skin, our hair, our teeth, and our kind of body fat distribution is an indicator of our overall health. So it is helpful to look at those things as well, but it's more helpful psychologically, I find, to focus on strength and performance and lifestyle goals, just because so many of us are kind of bombarded with, obviously, as we know, outside images of unrealistic, unattainable aesthetics. And a lot of that isn't real. So they're aesthetic enhancements, surgical enhancements. And unfortunately that happens a lot. And that's not fitness. That's not exercise. I can't tell you how many people I've had come to me that want, a 20-inch waist and huge glutes and no legs, tiny little slim legs. And I'm like, hey, you want huge glutes, you're going to have quads and hamstrings as well. It's not possible to build your glutes without using your legs. And when you use your legs, they're going to grow and develop. They may not develop at the same rate, and there are ways to kind of target growth, but everything else has to move. You have to support the weight you're lifting with the rest of your body. So it's impossible to isolate just one muscle group.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing about it. And I also kind of feel like it's always like external like focuses, like someone is trying to attain something and then it's funny because like an example, like society wise, it's funny because at one time slender build was good. Now we want this look, and it's like, it's this never ending craziness. And it just doesn't really make sense to chase after that, because at the end of the day, tomorrow it might be something else. You know, it's really going to come down to what you're happy with and really like, you know, makes you, you know, feel good about yourself internally, and really what really makes you happy. I think that's what matters.
Exactly. And healthy.
And healthy. Yeah, exactly. Because when you're healthy, then you just feel better. That's kind of how this whole thing started for me with Hustle and Fit. It was this, I was a financial planner sitting at a desk, and I was like, I went and got into shape, and then boom, my whole life just changed. So that's kind of why I think like fitness is the main focus that people should be getting on, because it'll just change every aspect of it. Actually, that brings up a good thing. Like, what's one thing, or what are a couple things that you have learned doing what you're doing in fitness that is translated to other parts of your life? Like, just like 2 or 3 things you would say.
So it's funny because people approach me and say, you're fit because of what you do. You're fit because you're a trainer, and you have to exercise because you're a trainer. But for me, there's no like segregation between my work and my life. It is one and the same. Right now in quarantine, it literally is one and the same. I'm literally at work all the time. So, but even without quarantine, I am my product. Like, I am my business. It's not something that exists outside of me, which is unique. That's, you know, there are only a few industries where, you know, the person themselves is the product they're offering to their clients. So for me, it's one big picture. That's why I look at fitness for my clients as well, very holistically, because for one, you can't do anything without your health. So I think we're all kind of realizing that now with a pandemic kind of right in our faces, which is so important and so, you know, such a blessing for me, because I've been trying to hammer home that message for the last 15 years. But like I said before, often for a lot of industries, people are almost like walking heads, and they kind of neglect what's going on from the neck down, because they think they use only their brain for work. So what's important to take home is that your brain and body, for one, are one thing. So there's a lot of research coming out now with the mind-body connection and the brain-gut connection, which is probably some of the most important research that I've come across. And that's a whole other topic, but it's so, so important for everybody to understand. The gut is now being identified as your first brain, and then our brain in our head is our second brain. So the gut is kind of what controls everything else in the body, and as an extension, the whole human experience, because we shape our environment around us. So if we're not treating our gut with integrity, and we're not prioritizing the health of our gut, which includes managing stress levels, sleeping properly, exercising or moving daily, eating quality foods, all of that, you know, limiting any environmental toxic exposure, all of that is going to feed back into everything else you do. So if your job or your career requires your brain, take care of your gut first. That's like literally one of the most important things I've ever learned in my entire life. I had to learn that the hard way myself. So managing lifestyle factors to contribute to gut health and nourish gut health is probably one of the most important things I've learned. And obviously with my lifestyle, with this profession, I get a big push towards learning these things faster, because I've had some health issues in my past, some that I'm still dealing with, a lot of them centered around gut health. And when my gut health goes and I've got issues, it limits my ability to work. So I've got that kind of really big sense of urgency to address and take care of and understand what it means to be in optimal health. And I will say that this kind of quarantine situation has really amplified that, because it's challenged me in different ways. With virtual training, I do a lot more demos. Like, I'm moving constantly. So if like last Friday, I made the mistake of scheduling 6 HIIT sessions for 6 different groups / clients and an IG live. And my IG live was the last one. And if you've ever done an IG live workout, the trainer works the whole time. So I realized, wait, like I've now done 6 HIIT workouts today. Like this is insane. If I was not in a good place that day, especially from a gut perspective, it wouldn't have happened. I would have crashed halfway through. So even though there's a lot of us are sitting at desks, like you know, you were in finance or whatever, you feel like it's not going to impact you, but you're not functioning at optimal cognitive function if your gut's not healthy. So I would say that's probably the absolute biggest lesson that everybody should kind of take home is treat your gut as if you would treat your child, you know, like nourish your gut, take care of your gut, be kind to your gut, just like you would a newborn baby, because you can't function at an optimal level in any way without that. And then, like I said before about the daily movement, just incorporating daily activities, daily exercise of some sort, which I know it's tough for a lot of people with their schedules, and it's really tough right now in quarantine. But like I said, something's better than nothing. Even if you did a little quick mobility sequence for 20 minutes midday, you know, while you're cooking your lunch or before you go to bed, or go for a little walk, something like that, all of those things are going to improve your overall health and your adaptation to exercise in ways that you would, you know, otherwise not even realize. Like it's such a huge impact on your body.
Awesome. I usually ask what message you want to leave the audience with, but I think you already covered that already. And so gut health, it sounds like a big topic. And so where can people find you?
I can be found on Instagram. That's my primary source of business contact is at Balance with Bree. So I post a lot of workouts and stuff there, and I'm working on a more extensive website right now. So when I have that up, I'll link it up with my Instagram, and there will be a lot more like holistic type stuff there, where it's less strictly fitness and more lifestyle, health, that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, let us know about that, because we would love to get everyone to know to push that on, put that in the comment section and stuff like that. But honestly, Bree, thank you so much for all this great information. Honestly, everybody, you need to follow Bree. You need to take her advice and you need to run with it. She provided some great information, and I've learned a lot, and I hope you have too. And once again, thank you guys for listening today, and have a great week.